members and learners of the Postgraduate Diploma in Environmental and Occupational Health. Today we will discuss paper and pulp industry, which forms a part of the course MEVE 004 Industrial Sector. So all of us wake up in the morning with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and then we have the newspaper in our hands. So do you know where this newspaper comes from, or what are the manufacturing processes that go into making or the production of these beautiful papers? And you have the colorful ones, you have magazines and so on. But nowadays some environmental conscious movements have made people recycle paper. So you get even the diaries or you get your calendars, everything made out of recycled paper. And another important thing is nowadays you get the recycled paper with some seeds in it. For example, the basil seeds or the tulsi seeds. So when you crush this paper after use, you write on it and you crush this paper after use, and then you put it into the ground, and then after 10 days or 15 days this decomposes, and from these, because they contain the seeds of the tulsi, basil, or it could be anything else, then you find that you get a new plant. So these are all some environmental conscious and eco-friendly ways how you can recycle the paper, and how we also become conscious and aware of the environmental health and our own health. I introduce myself as Dr. Sushmita Bhaskar, working in the discipline of environmental studies in the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Welcome to this session. Now, after listening to this lecture, you will be able to understand the constituents that go into making the newspaper and different other types of paper and in the pulp industry. We will also see the waste that are generated from this industry and the environmental and the occupational health impacts of these industries. Finally, we will see some solutions and some management techniques which can be practiced in order to avoid the waste coming out from this industry or the treatment procedures that could be followed. So now let us start with the session. Throughout the day, now we are using several types of paper. It could be in the office, it could be in the schools, in the institutions, it could be also at home. So we are using paper for various use, maybe in your cupboards or for wrapping your vegetables and so on. So they are coming into contact, we are coming into contact with so many different types of papers, and so thereby we are generating volumes of paper each day, that is as the waste, or that is which is already the used paper which I am referring to. So more than 18 tons of paper are produced every year in India, and the paper industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world. And the paper and the pulp, these are manufactured from the raw materials containing the cellulose fibers. Generally we have wood, recycled paper and the agricultural residues. Now in the developing countries, if we see, about 60% of the cellulose fibers, they originate from the non-wood bamboo, that is the raw materials such as bagasse, the cereal straw, bamboo, reeds, esparto grass, jute, flax and the sisal. The main steps that are followed in the paper and the pulp manufacturing, they include the raw material preparation and handling, pulp manufacturing, pulp washing and screening, the chemical recovery, bleaching, stock preparation and paper making. Now when we refer to as pulp, how do we define pulp? So this is nothing but a lignocellulosic fibrous material, and this is prepared chemically or mechanically by separating the cellulose fibers from the wood, the fiber crops or the waste paper. So paper is a major product of the forest industry and it is widely used in our society. So there had been concerns even before even recently that deforestation and many of the trees are actually being cut off and being exploited by the paper industry. Now coming on to the paper products, we have a variety of these specialty papers, and we have cardboards, we have brown papers, those that are going into the manufacturing, as I told you, of the calendars, of the diaries, and also we have the greeting cards and so on. So in addition, various chemicals are produced as a byproduct of this industry alone. So this paper and the pulp production is not only based on the use of bamboo as a raw material, but also on the consumption of large scale chemicals, like you can have chlorine, then sodium hydroxide and so on. Now let us go on to the types of waste that are generated in this industry. So the paper and the pulp is intensive in terms of the raw material consumption, and besides the pollution load generation, the other consumption, they include the chemical energy, water and also the capital requirements. So about 41.8% of the wood, it is recovered as a bleached pulp, and of the remaining wood, roughly 4.2% we can say that this ends up as solid waste, 5% or so goes into the wastewaters as dissolved organic matter, and 2.3% goes as the suspended solids in the wastewater. The potential pollutants from the pulp and the paper mill. Now from these pulp and the paper mill, we can get the water effluent. So they use a large amount of water in the bleaching agents and so on. So the suspended solids, including the bark particles, the fibers and the pigments and the dirt, all this can be got into the water. Then we have dissolved colloidal organics like hemicelluloses, sugars, the lignin compounds which are all coming from these plant barks. Then we have alcohol, the turpentine, sizing agents, adhesives like starch and the synthetics. Some more of the pollutants which enter the water bodies include the color, and that primarily includes the lignin compounds and the dyes. The dissolved inorganics such as sodium hydroxide, then also you have certain other bleach chemicals. Then the thermal load is also quite a lot. Microorganisms such as the coliform or the E. coli bacteria, they will also grow in such thermophilic conditions. So we have even group of microorganisms. Then finally we have a lot of toxic chemicals which are generated, which can also cause eye and skin irritations. Gases, primarily sulfur and hydrogen sulfide, this is released from various stages in the kraft pulping and also in the recovery processes. Oxides of sulfur from the power plants, the kraft recovery furnace and the lime kiln. So these oxides are also recovered, that is basically of sulfur. Then we have the steam and the particulate material. Fly ash is also given out from the coal fired power boilers. And then the chemical particles, these also primarily they consist of sodium and the calcium containing compounds, and also char from the bark burners. So these are some of the pollutants which are generated from the industry. Then coming on to the solid waste. Sludge from the primary as well as the secondary treatment and causticizing in the kraft mill recovery section. This is going to give out a lot of the solid waste. Now solids such as the grit, bark and other mill waste and also ash from the coal fired boilers. So these comprise some of the solid waste from this industry. Now coming on to the occupational and environmental hazards. So you have seen now the different types of chemicals that are used in different stages in the manufacturing of the paper and processing of the paper. So the employees who are working in such industries, they are exposed to all these bleaching chemicals in the pulp mills, and then they are also exposed to the wood dust and also the terpenes. Also in the sulfate mills, you have the gases like hydrogen sulfide and the reduced sulfur compounds. All these can be irritating agents to the respiratory system. Now the paper dust and different additives are also used, and these are also, some of them are also potential carcinogens. Other exposures include noise, heat and the microorganisms which can also create a variety of havoc in the human beings. Safety hazards including the wet walking surfaces, moving equipments and heights. This can also, like they can be even from your machinery, from the noise, the heat exposure the employees are exposed to. This can also give rise to several types of the occupational hazards. Now in the chemical recovery areas, there we find the acidic and the alkaline process chemicals, and these also have their byproducts. So their byproducts also may be present in the temperatures, at high temperatures which can exceed 800 degree centigrade. So thereby the workers are at a risk of risking themselves for the chemical and the thermal burn. So they need to do these processes very carefully. Now the workers may also be exposed to dust when the sodium sulfate is added to the concentrated black liquor, and if there is any leak or if there is any opening, that will release these noxious reduced sulfur gases. So they have to do this all with utmost caution and precaution. Water leaks in the tube walls of the boiler, that have also resulted in several fatal explosions. Now in the bleach plants, the field operations and the field operators, they may be exposed to bleaching agents as well as chlorinated organics and other byproducts. The chemical exposures in the machine room of a pulp or the paper mill, that includes certain other the chemical carryover from the bleach plant and also the paper making additives and the chemical mixture in the wastewaters. Now the workers responsible for the water treatment, they can also expose themselves to the chemicals such as chlorine, then hydrazine and also various types of resins. Let us come on to the effects on health and the environment. The most obvious link between the paper industry and the environment. This is actually a pressing threat to the forest cover. Any serious threat, that is the effluent that is discharged by this industry, that will be highly toxic and it can find its way into the groundwater of the adjoining areas. In the same way, the soil can also be contaminated with these products, the pollutants from these industries. So naturally, these products have to be disposed of. Many factories earlier, they were using the conventional aerobic treatment plant and that used the bacteria in order to clean the wastewater. But the aerobic treatment, that was found to be highly energy intensive in the long run. So it is taking up a lot of energy. So now, and that was not cost effective also. So but nowadays the treatment is done by the new anaerobic digestion process and this also generates a biogas in the process as a byproduct. So this process is less energy consuming and it will reduce the energy consumption of the paper mill by even half, by 50%. And the biogas which is given out, that is also substituting 15% of the mill's fuel requirements. So that is an eco-friendly alternative. Some of the environmental problems regarding the paper and the pulp industries are not limited to only the high water consumption. Like for example, we have the solid waste. They include the sludge that is generated from the wastewater treatment plants and the air emissions also can cause further problems. So therefore, an effective disposal and the treatment is utmost essential in this industry. Now asbestos, this can cause asbestosis and this is an air pollutant and it is coming from this industry and it has a potential to get lodged in the lungs and it will cause scarring of the lungs and it can induce lung tumor and also the mesotheliomas. Pathological asbestos, as the name indicates, it is associated with a significant increase in the lung cancer risk. Silica has long been known to cause progressive granulomatous and fibrotic disease in the lung and in the human and it affects the DNA. Now silica can also cause the chromosomal aberrations and transformation in the mammalian cells. Management of these waste. So along with the tough environmental legislation, the paper mills can be encouraged to turn energy efficient and also eco-friendly. The leftover waste sludge, this can be used to make the paper boards for the containers and in the same way the clean water can then that can also be used to the nearby agricultural field, maybe for the horticulture and that management. Water conservation methods. So these are some of the management practices that we are discussing now. The pulp mill, the raw material washing, that could be done with the treated effluent. So thereby you can conserve the fresh water. Then the washing efficiency of the pulp washers, that can also be improved. The paper machine backwater, that should be used in the pulp dilution in the unbleached towers. The backwaters should also be used in cleaning of the pulp and the vacuum pump sealing. So these are ways where the treated water and the water can also be recycled and used in several of the processing stations. The bleach plant filtration, that should be recycled in the pulp dilution in the tower and the vat and also in the shower sprays in the different stages. The paper machines, efficiency of the fiber separation should be increased to the best possible extent. Then the clarified backwater, that should be used in the showers except in the felt cleaning. Cooling tower for the vacuum pump and the other brake drum for example, this can be installed and the water can also be recycled. These are again some more innovative ways where the water can be recycled and can be reused in the different stages in the pulp industry. The boiler house, now from this also the treated effluent, that should be used in the ash quenching. Then membrane based processes for the water softening can be installed in place of the conventional chemical processes. Cleaner production. So when we always talk about technology and engineering solutions, we always talk about clean technologies and clean production. So when there is a continuous application of an integrated approach to improve the mill operation, especially in this industry, it could be by adopting the modern technologies, optimized process operation, the resource recovery and maximum output can be done for per unit of the raw material inputs. Now some of the paper industries and mostly in India, we use the old pulping technologies and the elemental chlorine bleaching. So this is quite toxic, it is hazardous, and but the cleaner technologies for pulping of the raw material can be used, which are continuous pulping, RDH pulping, oxygen delignification, and for the pulp bleaching also we have the modern technologies which are elemental chlorine free bleaching, the chlorine dioxide bleaching and oxygen peroxide bleaching. These are some clean technologies. Elements of the clean production. So there are a few approaches to achieve the cleaner production which are known as the CP technologies. We have the source reduction and process change. In the source reduction, it refers to the change in the existing practices or introducing new techniques in operating and maintaining the equipments. The prevention of spills and leakages, these are typical housekeeping measures. Process change, this includes 4 options: a change in the input material, better process control, equipment modification and change in the technology. Recycling, this covers on-site recovery and reuse of the materials and energy which otherwise was a waste. Recovered material can be better used in the same process or for other purposes. Product modification, they produce high yield varieties of the paper in order to minimize the environmental impact from the disposal of the product. Now the pulp and the paper industry, they consume significant amount of water and energy, all this so far what we have been discussing. And this produces wastewater with high concentrations of chemical oxygen demand among the other contaminants. Now recently there have been reports and scientific publications, they say that the coagulation as a pre-treatment of the pulp and the paper industrial wastewater would be a cost-effective solution for the removal of such chemical oxygen demand and the reduction of the pressures on the aquatic environment. Because otherwise in the aquatic environment you will see that then the dissolved oxygen, the content will be less, and then those organisms which are dependent on this dissolved organism, they are also affected in this process, in that entire aquatic ecosystem. So although the solid waste generation during the various stages of the paper and the pulp manufacture are unavoidable, however, some of the solid waste can be reduced substantially by the in-plant control measures. By proper designing of the municipal waste collection, recycling of the paper can be enhanced, and this will result in the conservation of the forest raw material. So my dear learners, in this session we have understood about the different occupational and the environmental hazards that are faced in the paper and the pulp industries. Initially we also discussed about the different processes that are used in this industry and the different types of waste that are generated, and we have seen that they use a large amount of water in its process. So the management technologies also were discussed where the water can be recycled, and cleaner production processes that water can be recycled and reused, and also cleaner technologies by not using very harmful bleaching materials, this also can be employed. And as I said in the beginning, this recycled paper also we are getting them with a lot of eco-friendly alternatives, and it is high time that we turn on even to a certain extent to the e-papers, to the electronic mode of viewing the papers, and even the use of the papers also can be minimized to a certain extent, and even in the offices we can go for the e-circulars, the e-diaries, the e-calendars, which have already been implemented in many of the government and the private institutions, and these are all some ways as how we can control the amount of the waste that is coming out from this industry. And as conscientious citizens, we can also do our part and our bit for controlling pollution and thereby ensuring the environmental and the human health, good human health for all. Thank you for your patient listening.